Hey lovelies, welcome to episode number 47 of the journey of self-love through self-care. My name is Amy Mercado and I'm the owner and the creator of my brand, The Mercado Method. And I teach a variety of online classes and in-person yoga and fitness. And you can head over to my Linktree or my Instagram, all the details will be below if you want to find out any more information. Today, I have a guest called Zoe Whitehead, who's here from the Lunar Light Worker, her own business and entrepreneur, which I'm super excited to find out more. And we connected through Instagram. Well, Zoe reached out to me about doing an exchange through a podcast and an Instagram, which was like my first kind of exchange like that. So I'm quite nervous, but excited to see what comes out. And yes, I'm going to hand over to you, Zoe. Let us know who you are, what you do, and what's your connection as well, like, because we're all about the moon. So what's your connection with the moon? And just introduce yourself.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Eamon. We had a fab live, didn't we, over on Insta last night? I love finding out all about what you do as well. So my name's Zoe. Obviously, I'm British, English, as you can tell by the accent, based in the UK. And my jam is light work. So I support empathic light workers to really start to step into their light and reach their fullest potential and really start to ignite their passion and purpose. And we do this primarily by connecting with the lunar cycles and cosmic and earth kind of seasonal cycles. That's our main what we weave into all of our teachings and the way that we live our lives as well. And yeah, that really is my purpose and my mission. That's what I feel I'm here to do. It really lights me up. And I guess my journey started from probably not that long ago, my awakening about 15 years ago, where I was originally working as a teacher in school and teaching languages to teenagers, and it's all very stressful. And obviously, as an empath, not knowing that, I was onboarding, and I guess all your empathic audience will understand that, onboarding all that stress, that high anxiety, and not really understanding what was going on, and understanding that I had these gifts. And I kind of had a bit of a breakdown and left within a week of the teaching, not really knowing what I wanted to do. But just prior to that, I'd started setting up little nurture workshops in the schools with, because there were a lot of, well, as always, there were a lot of children that school refuse or have high anxiety. So I was starting to, at the time I was trained in children's yoga and transference healing, which is the energy modality. I just kind of started that for myself. And I thought, right, I could do something here. So I approached the head, and he was really open. So I used to come with my crystals, my gridding cards, and I'd run energy on the children. They'd really shift really quickly, because obviously they're very unquestioning and open. And so this was kind of coupled with my kind of breakdown, from the pressure of teaching, being in a highly stressful environment. And so, as I said, I left and kind of cried for about a week. And I had no idea what I was going to do, where I was headed. But it slowly became obvious to me that was my calling, really, was to help in this way with vibrational energy and helping children to sort and people to sort of find themselves again and rediscover themselves. And that kind of morphed into circles. That I used to have women come into the living room, in my house, and we'd convene every week, and we'd and it became, funnily enough, it just kind of started to connect with the moon cycles. It just gradually, how things unfold. And I'd run energy, I'd do teachings and things like that. And that's really how it started. And I thought, I really love doing this. It really lit me up, and I'd have people over for one-to-one healing, things like that. And then, like you, COVID hit, and everything just, everything kind of had to crumble. And it made me realize that actually I need to go online with this. This is my bigger purpose. I can we become global, don't we, if that's what we want. And so I could really expand out. And I started to discover light work, and I just love that. And just really starting to weave in these natural cycles into my teachings and the energy work that I did, and really starting to help people to ignite their soul purpose. That really is where it's heading for me now. But that's kind of in a nutshell who I am, what I do, and my awakening, really.
Well, the thing that made me laugh is like I haven't been doing this long, 15 years, and I thought, bloody hell, my awakening only really started about 2 years ago. So I'm just scratching that little surface. I thought, oh my God, if you're still seeing that, but no, that did make me chuckle.
Oh, I've always, most people that I talk to, Amy, have had a really meteoric, awakening. It was like almost overnight. Mine was at such a snail pace, because I think I was frightened. I felt my power, but I was just really resistant. So for it, probably I would say a good stretch of sort of 10 years of just dabbling with yoga, meditation, crystals, and just all for myself, and not really wanting to go any further with that. And I talk about my awakening as in finding my purpose. That's what I mean. I mean, obviously I was waking up, but for me, it was so slow, because I was in a lot of fear around it. So I couldn't let go.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like I kind of didn't really have a choice with mine. It kind of come, and I realised yesterday when we spoke on the It's Live, what I didn't mention was like, I think what really woke me up was going through like severe heartache, and that sort of was what actually woke me up to this. There's more to this than actually feeling this. But when you say fear, like fear for me, like I still get a lot of fear around this, because it's like every time I sort of go down a little bit more of a rabbit hole, more stuff comes up, and I think, oh my God, is this real? Am I losing the plot? Is this? And it's really, I was feeling into this, like, I feel like I sometimes sound like I'm absolutely batshit crazy with some of the stuff that's happening. So maybe I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it, but to maybe do it over the 10 years and have that smoothness and not be so intense. It's like, what is the right or wrong way to sort of go through this process?
I don't think there is. I don't even know if we can define it. But I thought a lot about this. I don't even know if we can define it as right or wrong. I suppose it just is. And that's very much my nature. It's not a cautious thing, but I have a lot of resistance. And I think in the way I approach life, it is a bit like that. And maybe not an inner knowing, maybe you the thing is, we all come in at different levels of consciousness, don't we? So maybe you've done loads of clearing and we're ready at that point. I mean, you're a lot younger than I am, but I don't know, that's just how it had to unfold for me, I guess.
It is. I mean, I find it very hard to surrender. So for me, even with some of the stuff that even today when I did like a breath work, I could feel like it's almost like I could start to see myself let go, and then my body's like, where you going? And then it whips me back in. And I'm like, oh, we're still not quite ready yet, and that's okay, because I sometimes feel like I'm chasing something as well, and it's like, just where am I in this very moment? Am I safe? And then I check in with myself. But it is there's a lot, because when you start looking into it, and then some of the rabbit holes you can go down are quite deep. So it's like, does that resonate with me? Do I want to? And then I think, am I ignoring that, or am I just choosing to be focused on where I'm at in the moment?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, I always like to explore what I resonate with. And I do understand that part of our empowerment and part of our awakening and stepping into our power is to release those blocks that hold us back. So there is a huge amount of fear, especially when, as well as an entrepreneur, especially when you're templating something so unique to you, your own essence. You've obviously, created this incredible system like this, that you're not really following anyone, are you? And you've woven in your loon work, and that's really hard because you've got no one to follow on. Do you know what I mean? You're not following anyone. You've got to kind of stand up and say, this is me. And it's you feel really exposed, and there's a lot of fear around that. But I understand now that is part of that purification and empowerment process that we have to go through it in quest of our soul purpose. And it really is, our biggest block is ourselves, isn't it? And we discover that the more we dare to step forward.
So before you was doing this then, so you said you trained to be a teacher.
Yeah.
You just did teaching for a week, or did you, when you said, or?
Oh no, a few years. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So what made you maybe feel into going into teaching originally then? What was sort of like the program, not programming, but what was sort of like, because sometimes I look back on the things that I chose when I was going through the school years, and it's like, oh, I think that's an option, I'll tick that box. I think that's an option, tick that box. If I could have said moon spiritualist, so a yoga instructor, that would not have been on the list.
No, I know, this is it. Well, it again, very much like in my kind of way of doing things, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to uni because at the time we got grants, and I didn't know what else I wanted to do. So I just kind of followed the crowd, and the degree I did was a real kind of modular course. So it was lots of little things because I didn't know I just didn't know myself. And that's so typically Chiron in Aries. We just really struggle with self-identity. And all I wanted to do, Amy, was live in France. That was all I wanted to do. So I was very good at French. My mum was French. So I did my degree, went off to France, just kind of like I just kind of did jobs to live. And then I, as you do, followed a man up to Belgium. And that kind of went pear-shaped. So I came back and I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And the obvious answer was teaching French. And languages. I did Spanish as well. I'd done that at uni. And I come from a long line of teachers. It's really in our lineage, and I love teaching, which is what I do in the membership. So I've always had that skill within me. So I guess that was it. It just always felt like I'd fallen into something because I didn't really know. There was nothing pulling me. So it really was all part of this big self-discovery journey. And I could see there were definite little clues as to where I needed to be. I always thought that I would work with children in a more spiritual way, spiritual capacity, but it just wasn't meant to be. It's women, a few men, but mainly women. And I think that I resonate more with the female vibe. I just do. I seem to attract women. And children not so much. So that's just how it's unfolded. And that's the thing as well, isn't it? You have to get over, like we were talking about last night, controlling the outcome. You have this idea in your head and you have this kind of higher vision, don't you? But it doesn't always unfold in the way that you think it's going to unfold, and we have to be prepared for that.
But when I feel into it, what's happened for me, and I don't know if it's probably a byproduct of what's happened to you, like when the yoga's on, sometimes the mum's been, oh, the kids did that with us. Or like when I went and hung out with my niece in Valencia and I was doing some stretching, my brother was like, she's been doing like yoga moves since you've gone. And I was like, oh, I'm infiltrating the system. So whatever we're sort of teaching to these mums or dads, like it's going to be reflected out for, if the parent's energy is changing or the person's energy is changing, even if you're not a parent and you're at work and your energy is changing, people are like, you seem really relaxed lately, or something shifted. I want a bit of that. So people then start asking questions, and with kids, they're curious. Like they're well more curious than adults. So they'll just start copying. They won't have no shame about it, and they'll just do what you're doing. So we are, and that's the thing. So a lot of people say, oh, you should work with kids, and I was like, oh, I haven't got the patience, and blah blah blah. But ironically, like it's sort of going down that system without me even needing to try.
You're attracting that, you're magnifying that, and that's obviously where you're at with it. I mean, it's so funny. I was talking to a client a couple of days ago, and her part of what she does is with children, and we were both saying, because when I first started with working with children in that way in schools, we were both saying how quickly we realized that it's not just the child, it's really the adult, it's the parent that almost needs the support. If the children have got anxiety, often it's like a family patterning, isn't it? Because we struggle. Sometimes we find it hard to template new ways. And I mean, I have two teenage boys. I'm very aware of the kind of ups and downs of testosterone, full moon, and
Wow.
it rises, doesn't it? So yeah, it's an interesting one. And we were both saying that, it is about helping and supporting the parents, because the children that are coming in, as you know, they're crystals or rainbows. They're templated differently. They see things differently. And in fact, it's us that have to play catch up with all of that. And that's why they really resonate with yoga, all of these sort of more holistic ways of being. They love energy, they respond so beautifully to it, and they're just non-questioning. There's no fear around it. I mean, I know you're a lot younger, but I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and we were just like that generation of shut up and sit down, do as you're told. We didn't question, we didn't dare question. And it's just not the way with these kids nowadays. They question everything. And thank God they do.
What was it like for you as like a teenager yourself? Like, did you express your emotions, or was everything quite platonic, or what was it sort of like growing up for you?
That's such a good question. So I was I am empathic, really empathic, like hugely sensitive. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand that about myself. I was very psychically open. So I used to see loads of things and hear loads of things. But I was very accepting of that. So there was all of that part, but also the empathic side. And so I was like a sponge. And I remember at school being, oh gosh, I just used to onboard everything, but not realize that it was other people's stuff as well as my own. So I resorted to becoming a people pleaser, people fixer, like the typical empathic ways of being. I kept myself really small, really under the radar. I was like a little quiet mouse. And it wasn't really until university that I really bloomed. It was almost, I always used to call myself a late bloomer. Like everything happened. I was tiny. And like I had spots when I was in my 20s. Like it was like everything came a lot later for me, physically, emotionally. And I do feel that was because of this empathic nature that I just, suppressed, kept myself small. And yeah.
Would you sort of, because my mum actually said when she was little, like, so I didn't, growing up for me, like I didn't really have, I had like inklings of things, but everything got shut down super soon. Like as soon as like the body dysmorphia and the eating stuff came in, and then I had to almost like grow up very, very, very young. So I had like a job from 13, and so I didn't have that exploration or anything. But did you? Because my mum said like she had the opportunity. So I didn't know this until recently. So yeah, I used to see things, and my mum used to take me swimming to sort of try and figure out what was going on and blah blah blah. Like, did you get an opportunity to explore it, or was it a case of like don't talk about it, shut it down, or did you feel comfortable expressing it?
I never did. Do you know what was so weird? Whenever I look back, maybe it wasn't, I was just really accepting. It was just like, oh, and I'll tell you what happened. It was always at my granddad's house in France. We always used to spend whole of our summers in France in this really rural village. And I used to share a bed with my sister. And every night I could see these beings. I don't really remember it. But all I remember, I don't remember what they really looked like, but I could see that there were what I thought were people on the end of the bed chatting, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. So I think I just assumed it was French. I didn't question it. It didn't frighten me, but it used to annoy the hell out of me because I couldn't sleep. It used to wake me up and I couldn't sleep. And I used to annoy my sister because I'd be tossing and turning. And I just remember it so vividly. And it would only ever happen there. I was obviously getting very activated. And I never spoke. I don't know. I think as children, we're very accepting, aren't we? And it was just right. I didn't question it. It was just normal. I also remember flying. I absolutely remember flying, and I have memories of that. And obviously that was out of body travel, like you know, sort of, you know, traveling, I couldn't think of the word then, out of body experiences, you know, at night or whatever. But funnily enough, I was talking to my best friend that I've known since I was 8, and she said I regularly used to talk about just being out of my body. I don't remember that, but I remember not being in it, you know, and just stuff like that. But I don't know, I guess like you, I must have shut it down and just kind of, when I went a bit introverted when I was older and as a teenager. And maybe that's what happened, but I was never frightened of it. It never frightened me. Or I don't remember being frightened of those memories, if you see what I mean. But yeah, it's funny.
My friend was talking, because I do his breath work sometimes, and he said like he keeps getting woken up as an adult now, and he's like, it's like Divine Father's coming in and wants to play at like 3 a.m, and he's like, then it's like Divine Mama's like, you're not putting your boundaries in. So I was just laughing. He's like, tell them, not now, I'm resting, we'll play tomorrow. But I was just thinking, it just made me giggle, and I thought, gosh, like to have that kind of energy. And I used to have very vivid dreams as a child, but not necessarily know what that was. What when you say you sort of like maybe shut it down or suppressed it, like was something triggered that, or did you feel like you had to grow up and get, you know, like get serious, or what sort of maybe influenced that?
I think I had a lot of emotional, like, you know, I was often in overwhelm. And I think, again, that was the empathic nature. I had a mother who, I mean, we got on really well, and I'm not in judgment of her, but she struggled emotionally. She was not able to support us emotionally. So maybe like you, we had to grow up quite quickly. We had to do things around the house. We just didn't get emotional support because she was unable to do that. And consequently, I guess that was never templated for me. So I had a lot of problems. You know, I had a bit of eating disorders, things like that as well. But it never defined me. I don't want to give the impression that it defined me. It definitely overshadowed my, say, teenage years, but you know, it's something that we learn to live with, and we learn to master more of and navigate. And I mean, I still binge. I still do a bit of binging, and not purging, but you know, the chocolate thing is my go-to. If it definitely is, you know, if I'm really honest, there's a bit of that. But you just kind of you find yourself, don't you? And this is why, you know, things like finding our purpose, our passion, and doing inner work and breath work and yoga and all of these beautiful inner practices really help us to build a strengthened core, and something we can just go back to whenever we have that fear rising. That's something that never stops, obviously, but we just learn to dance with our fear, don't we? I just did a post about that the other day, actually, because it is that's what happens. There's always been a bit of misconception, I feel, with spirituality, you know, when you're awakening and you're really stepping into your purpose, and that, you know, you don't really have these angst and these, you know, crises, but you do. But it's just that you learn to come back to that point of center quicker. Maybe you don't stay so stuck in it, do you? You learn to navigate it. You learn to dance with it and be okay in it. You know, and yeah, that's really been my journey through it all.
I feel like something I'm starting to realise is we've all been taught to fear.
Mm.
It's almost like, oh, if that feels a bit uncomfortable, a bit scary, like run away from it, or like don't go near it. It's like curiosity, like killed the cat, and all this sort of stuff that we've sort of gone through. And I was like, so I kind of need to face these fears and be with these emotions. And it's almost like I feel like I'm a child learning to navigate at the moment through what am I, and even though it's me, it's a very, very short window for me on this journey so far. And it's like I was doing some inner child's meditation earlier, and it was like be with that inner child and feel that fear and not run away from it. Because normally I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel that. I'm going to block it out or numb it out.
Yeah.
And it sounds amazing that you've been able to sort of navigate through this for such a long, like to be steady like this. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, it's taken me a long time, Amy. I mean, it's a practice. It's a specific practice that I do. It's so interesting you talked about, because when it feels childlike, we know that's inner child pain. It's inner child wounding, negative experiences that are resurfacing, things that we haven't quite let go of or dealt with or suppressed. You know, most of us either suppress. We're really good at that, aren't we? And especially in this, it's very much in the British psyche, I feel, to suppress and stiff upper lip and let's get on with it kind of thing. Or we go into overwhelm, which was very much my case, and I became frightened of my feelings. I didn't know where to go with it because that was very much my mum's patterning. Or we do a bit of both. So I knew it, and it's like anything, isn't it? You know, when you realize what you're destined to be doing, which for me was helping people in this way, I knew I had to heal that within me, or I had to unravel and unpick that patterning, which is interesting because my eldest son was showing signs of that earlier in, you know, when he was younger. He's now 15, and he's totally doesn't do that anymore because I've cleared it within myself. And this is what happens when you clear on that genetic line, you know, that lineage, that kind of spiritual lineage, or not spiritual lineage, but that way of being. It clears within the family as well. It's so interesting. But for me, I've got a very specific process. I recognize it. You know, whatever's coming up, I own it because I'll always have a part in it. I don't try and understand it. So I'm not kind of bringing in my mental body. I'm just like, okay, I'm feeling shit. I'm having a shit day. I'm not okay, but I'm okay with not being okay. That's the kind of thing I do. I tell myself, and that creates that little space, that little gap. And then I just sit with it. I sit with the discomfort because I know it will pass. It might take a couple of hours, but it will pass. I tell my husband, I tell you, look, don't take it personally. I'm not in a good space. I don't need to know why. You don't need to know why. You know, it doesn't matter. And I just make sure I'm not projecting out. I'm not blaming him or whatever, because your personality self just wants to blame someone. It's so straight away. You want to know what it is, who's to blame. And I just own it, and it just dissipates. And then you have like a little bit of clarity over whatever's going on, or you know, you feel strengthened within. And it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I definitely have my wobbles and I lose my shit sometimes, but it's pretty quick lived now. And it just, you know, that practice just strengthens you each and every time. So, you know, there might maybe periods in almost every day where I'm like, oh, you know, it's not about, this is what I used to think. I have to be 100% all the time. And, you know, when we look at nature, nothing blooms. You know, we all know that nothing blooms, does it? It's like maybe for 6-7 weeks it blooms, you know, and we're expecting ourselves to be these kind of Pollyannas, and we're just not meant to be like that. And it's giving ourselves space and time to kind of navigate whatever, get over ourselves, and, you know, just be self-loving and be gentle.
And one thing, I was talking to my friend about it yesterday on the phone to him, and I said, I don't quote me on this, but I listened to something and they said like women's hormones change like hourly and men's change like every 12 hours or something. I was like, of course we change every freaking hour. But it's like we're navigating with the moon cycles, we're navigating with emotions. So we've got the human in us that's got all this stuff actually going on in our body. Then we've got the systems that are being probably overridden because we don't actually know how to soothe ourselves, a lot of us, or we're sort of going through this process of learning to regulate ourselves. And then we've got the spiritual side and like you said, like the stuff that's been in the lineage and the DNA, and then you've got the societal stuff, and it's just like, no wonder why none of us know whether we're going. But what I was interested in as well is, like, with 2 teenage sons as well, because I've got a lot of mums that are going through a lot with their kids at the moment. Like you said that your son's sort of shifted where you've been doing your work. Like, maybe you could share like what maybe you'd recommend for busy mums, like, because there's a lot of people that are still in this like crazy juggling act of doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all still juggling, but some of the stuff when I listen to my friends doing it, and I'm like, oh my God, and this is just me trying to figure out my stuff. Like, respect to all the other people doing all their business as well. But what would you sort of maybe recommend to help with like the teenage not the situation, but like to sort of navigate, because what I'm finding and hearing is a lot like the mums are then taking on that emotion and taking on that guilt and that worry and everything like that. And it's like, how do you sort of navigate through that, or what would you maybe recommend?
Wow, yeah. So I love that. I absolutely love that, you know. Yes, really, really good question. I think the biggest learning for me, Amy, and it's been the most profound realization that has helped with everything that's unfolded with our family, is that I guide, but I'm not responsible for them. I absolutely, you know, I've got one he's not doing stroke of work for his GC. Okay, it's early days, but he hasn't done anything, and I don't think he'll do much. And I'm like, okay, you know, you know what we think, you know what we recommend, but it's your life, it's your consequences. And I've just had to take a step back. I guide, but I take a step back, and I'm not responsible. I'm not responsible. The other one came out in, bless him, in year 7, and was like really loud and proud. And, you know, obviously big state secondary schools are getting all these kind of, you know, like homophobic, you know, all of it, because he was so in their face with it. And I thought, right, he went to skirt, makeup. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to get beaten to the pulp. And I just thought, well, that's his learning. That's his challenge. He's got to let it come out. And it was really hard, you know, but you have to let go. I know it sounds really obvious, and like probably people are saying, but how do I let go? But, you know, I've always felt, and I totally believe in this, that we come through with a particular life path and particular challenges, and it's part of our soul contract, you know. And for him to, you know, maybe he's going to be some sort of person that will help people come out, you know, maybe that's his role, you know, maybe, because there's not a lot of boys that will come out, you know, it's more trendy with girls. But you know, I don't know, maybe this is part of his learning, and there's a higher purpose within that, but I'm not going to stand in his way. You know, but just me, by thinking that this is their challenge and this is something they have to learn for themselves, it just gives me that degree of separation. And then I don't get the guilt. I don't, you know, I have wobbles and I think, am I doing the right thing? But I know ultimately that if I step in and I'm constantly behind them, and they're not going to learn what they've got to learn, and they're not going to be able to know who they are. For me, the most important thing above GCSEs and the rest of it is they know who they are. And I think we've achieved that. I really do feel that. But, you know, it's hard to take that step back sometimes. I don't know whether that helps your listeners, but also I would say on a personal level that you come first. You always come first. You put yourself first. You carve out time for yourself every single day, even if it's 5 minutes for inner practices, because if you are not in a good space, you cannot support anybody else. And that, I would say, that and the kind of getting, you know, having that degree of separation has been the 2 foundational beliefs that I've always stuck by. And I feel that, yeah, okay, my kids have wobbles and things like that, but you know, I think they're pretty steady. They're pretty steady lads, you know. But although saying that, girls are harder. They're more complicated, aren't they, emotionally? Whereas boys are easier when they're older.
I do feel for my brother, because he grew up with me and my mum, like, because once my dad moved out, but I was like, God, he had 2 women to deal with as well.
Yeah.
Just thinking, how did he do it? Must have been a lot. But what as well was interesting, you said like your eldest has sort of shifted. What sort of was that you doing your stuff, or was like,
Oh,
that sort of?
yeah, sorry, Amy, I kind of didn't go into that. So yeah, I was running a lot of energy on him, because I'm a transference healer, so I ran a lot of energy on him.
What does that mean? Sorry, because to me, I don't.
Yeah, that's an important question. So it's a modality, it's a healing modality where I channel energy, and I'm taught to run energy in a particular way using a set of procedures. It's a relatively new modality where the teacher, the founder of it, is still alive. She's Australian, and we use kind of crystal technology. It's deeply alchemizing, so it goes right down into the body and consciousness, creates shifts. We use pastor-centered mastery. It's very, there's a lot that goes into it. But you just, I suppose for the purposes of this conversation, it's a way of running energy that's high vibrational. So it creates shifts as soon as you start running it. Even before, sometimes it starts to create shifts, and you just see people shifting, moving, transforming, letting go of stuff. So I think that has been a real backbone to what I've been doing. Obviously my own work and letting go of patterning, so that I'm different in the way I approach things. I'm a great believer in modeling, embodying what you believe. They see me and my husband, we really hold a space. We really try and hold a space. And what I mean by that is we don't get involved emotionally so much in things. And they see that, children see everything, and they'll see how you approach things and how you cope with things and how you navigate things. So all of that, I suppose, is woven in. And I don't sit there talking like we talk, but, say if something comes up or something at school, or, I just have a more spiritual perspective, just naturally, because I live and breathe this stuff probably as you do. That's embodiment, isn't it? So
it sounds like as well, like, because if your eldest is 15,
yeah,
and then you said you've been on this journey for about 15 years.
Oh yes, I never thought that.
I don't know, I was just thinking that. Like, do you feel like that sort of maybe is what got you into that shift? Maybe. Possibly?
Yeah, because I noticed that pattern in him. It's my mum, and I know her mother had this, and I don't know beyond that, but they had this real emotional. It's like they had this kind of emotional wounding. They couldn't cope with their emotions, so they used to be very shouty and panicky, and just little things would get them het up. So that's why we never felt, myself and my sister, that we had emotional. They loved us in lots of different ways, but she couldn't give emotional support. She couldn't cope with things. And I saw that very much in him, and I knew that I had that in myself. So that really, and actually it's true, at the time when I was at school and I was helping children that were school refusing, he started to have quite a lot of anxiety as well. So it was, actually thinking about it, that was one thing that really led me into thinking I need to do something. I can use this energy work to help people, and I knew I needed to help myself at the same time. So well done for noticing that, because I never really.
That's interesting. I love my brain just quite And so tell us about what your lunar light is about and what sort of stuff you do, and share away, because I'm super curious.
So the Lunar Light Worker, I have three things. My membership, which is more of a kind of, it's a maintenance thing. So we have light workers that come in, and we kind of gather online every week. I do high frequency healing teachings that come up. We always look at the energy, like the cosmic dates that are coming out, like obviously we're in eclipse season, how that's going to impact us. We do soul questing, very much like you, around the new moon and full moons, we do rituals, intention settings, reflection, things like that. So it really is like a maintenance program. And then I have a group program, my Earth Alchemy group program, which is more of an introductory level for clearing blockages and, all those core limiting beliefs that hold us back, so that we can really start to connect to our light. And then I have my soul purpose mastery coaching, which is for, more kind of soul-led light workers who really want to discover more of what they're mastering in this lifetime. So it's those three things that kind of work together.
So not much. And I'm just super curious, so what does your partner do, like, out of curiosity? Is
He's very nerdy and he's lovely, but
he does what, sorry?
He's IT, he's computer.
Okay.
But you need nerds.
Now that you're online as well, I guess that kind of aligns even more so maybe with the IT.
Well, what we would love is that he then eventually stops and supports me, because it's all like the website, and then I'm not techie at all. So that would be his, that's what he'd love to do, is come and support me. But so it's great, he has his place in all of this as well. But
And where did you guys meet out of curiosity?
Oh, when I came back from Belgium after a failed relationship, I was doing, oh, it's always it was like that Chiron return. No, not Chiron return, Saturn return, sorry, wasn't it? In 30s, I came back, no career, no nothing. Living at my parents' house, and I got a little job temping where he worked. And that's where I met him. And he wasn't the nerdiest. So if you ever listen to this, you are not the nerdiest. But
You know what? I've accepted that I am a really big nerd and geek, and I fucking own it now because I was like, I love
yeah.
researching, and I just thought at something I'm actually really proud of is like how much I love to like geek out and learn.
Yeah.
But it's almost like been a bit of a, it's been seen as like, oh, a bit of a taboo. But now I'm like, I own that because I find that quite,
Yeah.
I find that very an attractive quality in someone as
Well,
well.
I think I always have. I've always gone for more geeky, nerdy types, I must say. And I think I am, yeah, probably me as well, but in a different way, not in the obvious ways. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was
How have you found like transitioning from being in person with people to doing the whole online? Like, and how do you, because
mm.
I'll ask that question first. I've got like, I'll just,
Yeah, that's really interesting question. I've never been asked that actually, but I do the biggest thing I found for me is that you can be more boundaried with your time.
yes.
Because have you found that I
Oh
was
my God.
yeah, I would have clients here for like 3 hours and it would drain me, but I find it difficult to like go, okay, if I didn't have back to back. So it's been a lot. I love that for that. But conversely, I work with a coach now because probably like you, we're not marketer. Well, I'm not a marketer. I never had that skill. And the online digital marketing is a minefield. There's so many moving parts to it. And I struggled for quite a few years to really get anywhere because I'm very community led and I love that. But I was really finding it difficult to kind of have the community and then introduce my products and move people along. And there's a whole way of doing that, isn't there? And I wanted it to be soul led. I wanted it to be very organic and soul led. But I found this beautiful coach now who's really, really helped with that. And my messaging, it was all of that, you've got to be really clear in your messaging and as so yeah, that's the part I really found challenging. But I love Facebook. I just think I come alive. I love teaching, so I love doing lives. I love doing Facebook. So those platforms like Insta and all of this Zoom really lend themselves well to that, don't they? If you're not afraid to go out and chat and be natural, I think it could be really powerful for you.
Did you find, did you have any resistance like being seen online when you transferred?
I can't remember that. That was the one thing that I didn't mind because I knew there were clients that I worked with or people who were trained in the same modality who were starting to build their own businesses and they just did not want to do the lives. And I used to love it. I've always loved it, I think, because I'm a teacher at heart and I don't mind having that audience. Some people there's nothing worse, I think, for them.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I'm quite comfortable with that and it didn't really sort of hit too much. But it is I was just, some people it's been a really big struggle, but I feel like for both of us it's been more of the technology side of things. It's like I'll read something, I'm like, how do I do this? And I'm like, I can't deal with this, and I'll shut the computer down. I'm just like, I mean, when I first started using this computer, I couldn't even work out how to copy and paste. I had to go on YouTube to work out how
Oh
to.
my
I was
God.
just like, how do you use this thing? Like, so it's been a whole journey,
Yeah.
and going, okay, I just need to dip my toe in a little bit. But
Mm.
and another question as well, like
Mm.
the things that have come up for me at the moment is still a lot of fear. So again, I'm sort of riding through that and going through this transition. But it's that when you go from maybe having a secure income and being a certain way to doing the whole entrepreneur thing and learning to trust that whatever's coming through in that moment. But Do you sort of feel that, or have you got like a structure in place, or how has that sort of been held for you?
Oh, yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, luckily, I'm so blessed in that obviously I have my husband who works full time. But there has been, and I was talking about guilt and earlier on, but there was a lot of guilt for me because I felt I wasn't contributing. And in fact, I was out of pocket for a long time because you obviously pay for email providers, blah, blah, blah. And that was very much part of the process. And you know what it's like, you do something, you have a launch or whatever, and it completely flops because I was just, I had no coach. I didn't have a pathway to follow. So I was just looking at endless YouTube videos and trying to patch it all together. And it just went on and on. And I went through this whole cycle of excitement, tears, fear, excitement. You just go around in circles as you go to your next. I was a bit like a magpie. Oh, that hasn't worked, so I'll try this. And oh God, it was just endless. And it really, I mean, if any of you that are listening are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, and I totally get that, especially as empaths, we're really suited to this way of working, get a coach. I would definitely recommend getting a coach or some sort of program. If you're not an entrepreneur and you don't have that container, that masculine structure behind your business, which you do need, I would definitely consider getting, someone is good. Being soul-led with that and led to someone, or just asking the universe to send someone your way, or do you know what I mean? I was very soul-led with the person. I heard her on a podcast and I thought, oh yeah, I want to work with her. And 2 years later, I found the money and we did it. And I'm still working with her today. And she's just totally transformed it for me. So yeah, that would be my advice because that was my personal experience. But yeah, if you're really floundering, I honestly don't think that you will get anywhere if you don't have that marketing expertise or you don't have someone to help you. But that's just my personal experience. So yeah.
It's the same with anything, I feel, as well, like whether it's like people get personal trainers, get therapists, it's just accepting that you're like, oh, I need someone to help me with marketing, or I need, and my dad always, because I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was until lockdown. I didn't know, that wasn't in my vocabulary, and it's only actually finding a book and then a business card dropped out of it that had entrepreneur teacher or something. So I googled what is an entrepreneur and went down this whole thing, and then found this blog that this guy had written. And I was like, oh, so having your own business is being entrepreneurial. Like that just wasn't I didn't know that was a thing at all. But then what I didn't also appreciate was the fact that I've been running a personal training business and stuff alongside. And I was like, oh, so technically you've had your own business for a long time and not really even noticed. So it's bringing that awareness to it, because it wasn't I just thought, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and it really, I couldn't do anything else. And that's the thing. That's when when you're on purpose and you're doing what you're meant to be doing, is when because that's what drove me, is that I'd kind of gone too far and invested too much, time, but it was also, well, what do I do? And I was like, I can't do anything but this. I know I'm really good at what I do and I'm meant to be doing this. I've got to find a way to make this work, so every time you're picking yourself up,
So how many would you say, because I feel like I keep going somewhere, hit a wall, fail, again, and I'm like, am I going nuts? Am I doing, like this morning when I was recording something, I didn't even switch the microphone on. I was just like, are you losing the plot? What are you doing? It's like 7 in the morning or something. I just thought, is this normal?
Oh, it is crazy, isn't it? But yeah, I just think, like, it's, if that's what you're meant to be doing, you'll find that way, and you'll just keep moving forwards with it. And it is part of the growth process. And if you're not quite sure how it's all going to come out for you, part of that process is to make those mistakes but keep moving forwards, because what else are you going to do?
How have you found like, do you, because that's what sort of come up for me today, like the fear of failure. So has that sort of come up for you at all?
Oh my God, yeah, definitely. I mean, even with the coach, Amy, you know, the other day we'd launched the membership in a new way, and I didn't get the numbers I was expecting. And at the same time, my engagement went down, like really plummeted on Facebook and Instagram. And I was like, oh, you know, and it, you know, I wasn't holding myself. You know, I had to sort of really work on myself to come back to center, and you know, but then it was all right. It turned out okay in the end. But you know, it's all part of it. You know, it's all part of learning to dance with that fear. That fear is always going to be there. You know, what level you're at each time as you grow, you're still going to things that won't work out. And it's about that's been the biggest learning actually this year, working with my coaches, you know, to navigate that fear, because it's a fear that will stop you moving forwards. You've got to find a way to work with that and be okay with that.
I think the biggest thing for me is realizing that I am worthy of investing in myself.
Yeah.
That's been a lot, like the self-worth, and it's like, oh, okay, I deserve to, you know, if I want to get a coach, or if I want to, you know, try something marketing or blah blah blah, like I'm worth investing in.
Yeah.
Be my own biggest asset. But it's again, when you're sort of going down this road and you think, oh God, money feels a bit uncomfortable, and it's like, can I justify this spend? But we have to spend money to make money, but it goes in this whole capsule, and it's like, how do you sort of juggle living in this world, transition over there?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest pivotal point was I knew that I had to work with Hayley, with the coach, and I'd heard her on a podcast, and I'd looked her up, and I didn't have the money. I mean, obviously my husband sort of runs the house on blah 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 and everything else, but you know, our money is we have a joint account. You know, it's not, but I couldn't afford, we couldn't afford for me to pay her to get me rebranded and all this. There was a big lump sum. And I was like, right, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I know I have to do it. And then do you know what? My aunt, out of the blue, who's French, had written a book. I had no idea she'd written a book. And she contacted me out of the blue, and she said, Zoe, would you translate this book? Would you consider translating it into French, which is not my forte. I'm not a translator. I mean, I speak French, and I was like, no. And do you know what? The amount was for the amount I needed. And I thought, hang on a minute, that's it. And I just thought, no, I need to do this. So I did it on top of everything. I did it. I bloody did it. I made myself do it. It took me 2 months, and it was really like hard work. But it will come. I know it always sounds so trite, and people say, but it does. It honestly does. If you were so determined to do this, and this is your purpose, you will get that help. And it may be that it will come in ways that you need to be open, because I nearly refused that. And I'm so glad that I took it on, because I could do it. And, you know, I did it. And sometimes, you know, you have to make little, and I just kept saying to myself, short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, because I was working weekends, and, you know, but it doesn't matter now. I've forgotten it all, you know, it's.
And just out of curiosity, because the dynamic, like with the financials and a partner, and then one doing that, like, did you guys like sort of sit down and discuss that, or how did it sort of?
That's a really good question. No, he's always, actually, I'm so blessed when I think about him. He's always been really supportive of what I do. And he, you know, he listens, because we have joined kind of like an office next door to each other. And so he listens to me on the lives, and he can really see, you know, what I do and how I help people. Yeah. So he's always known that in me. He knows that's my passion, and he's always been really fully supportive. But there was a point where he said, you've got to manifest now. So I want to invest, as in whatever, you know, because it was just like, oh, I need to do this course, you know. In terms of digital, I was making some mistakes initially with, you know, I'd got coaches that didn't quite get me there or whatever. And he was like, okay, we just can't afford to keep paying for these and not have the return. And at one point he just said, look, you're going to have to manifest this money. And it was like, oh my God, you know, and
I bet
that's
that blew his socks off then when the money came in with the thing, and he's like, holy shit, this stuff's real.
I know.
I better start believing too.
I know. There he has, but we've never had problems like that, you know, luckily. Yeah. So I am really blessed in that. But maybe that's just, you know, when we're not, you know, so it's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes you see people and you know they have the money and, you know, and they can just quite easily afford lots of courses, and you kind of have that comparisonitis. And I do get envious. I do, because it's not always been easy. You know, it's not when you're not, I mean, I'm not in some people's situations where they're having to pay for themselves and work 2 jobs. I'm not in that situation either. And you do feel envious, and that's been a really good learning curve actually, because there's been courses I would have loved to have gone on for my own training, but I haven't been able to, because everything's had to go into this coach, and then other people are going off on all these trainings all over the world, and I'm like, oh, you know. And then I think, no, turn that envy into inspiration. And I say to myself, you will have that. If they can do that, that means you can do that. When, you know, you will be doing that. And I turn it around, because I don't want to have that low vibe, you know. And I'm pleased for them, and and then I can be pleased for them, you know, because it's hard, isn't it, when you see.
Even I went down at the rabbit hole today, and I was looking at something, and I was like, oh, this person's doing a retreat, and I was like, whoa, get back in your lane. Where are you right now, and what needs to come through for you? Same for you, like whether it's jealousy or whatever it is, it's like, oh, that just means I want something that they have, and I'm going to turn that into inspiration, and also know that divine timing. And I always quote this, but I listen to this podcast, and these kids like making like £44,000 a day on YouTube, and I was like, well, anything is fucking possible. So, and these kids like, yeah, I was training to be a doctor, and then I was following all these things, and I realized I know what I wanted to do, and then I learned to do this, and he's like, I've got 44 grand a day to play with. And it's just each time just sort of, but it's accepting that we need money to help us and not have so much, because for me there's a lot of guilt and shame around it, and that challenge to say how much, like not even knowing what to charge half the time, and just undervaluing, and then so there's a lot of this dance going on.
It's a process, and it's self-worth. It's, you know, how do you value yourself? How, you know, you want people's approval. I mean, it just, this is why entrepreneurship, if anyone wants soul growth and personal development, become an entrepreneur, because it will test you in ways that you would not imagine. You know, and also remember that whoever you look at, you know, you see these gorgeous people on Instagram with these gorgeous lifestyles. Well, they didn't always have that. You know, they will have had to have gone through personal struggles to get to where they are. You know, nothing is handed to you unless you've come in at a kind of particularly enlightened place. Nothing is handed to you. If you haven't done it in this lifetime, you would have done it in others. And there's always a learning around it. I know I've got money blocks for sure. You know, but I'm picking them and just working through them, and that's all you can do, isn't it?
It's definitely I feel like it's my next chapter now, the money stage, and I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like I've sort of worked with the body bit and the eating bit, and like the relationship with self, and now it's like, right, the relationship with money, and I'm like, here we go, this is going to be a new ride.
It's all good.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'll pop all your details below on the whether people are watching this on YouTube or on Spotify or anything. So I'll put all your details below. So if people want to find out more information, they can click on you. And I'd love to, well, we'll have a little chat after. So I'm going to end the recording now. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's been gorgeous. You're so natural. It's been like just a chat with a friend. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Amy.
Right, so I'm going to end this.